Anyone else want to share where they're joining us from?
I'm calling in from New Hampshire.
I'm
Hello,
in up.
Eden
Oh,
here. Sorry,
oh, you
from
go.
the Philippines.
I'm in upstate New York. Chicago.
I'm also near Chicago right now, Bronwyn, a couple hours south.
Oh, we should meet up for a very cold drink. It's
Yeah, yeah,
the heat wave is about to hit. Good to see everyone.
right.
We are thankfully close to being done with a very, very extreme heat wave in northwestern Europe. It has been hot. Hot, but I will comment that the university was closed one day because of heat, and a lot of colleagues from other parts of the world were thinking, you all are not at all prepared. If this is hot enough for your country to have a red
Mm,
alert and for these public spaces to be shut down, this is an average summer day where I come from. So that was a very interesting moment of what is standard in one place versus another context. It was humbling. Now I can see how many more people RSVP'd to get a sense. We should have another 10 people joining. But I don't want us to start too late. So maybe it's an idea that we already start the presentation and just allow people to come in as they arrive. And otherwise we have a recording that we can share with the whole DevSCA community. Does that sound good to you all? Great. Okay. Well, our first presentation today is going to be by Associate Professor Eden DeRoll, who is a faculty member of the Applied Psychology Program at the University of the Philippines, Diliman Extension Program. There, she serves as coordinator of the National Service Training Program, integrating psychosocial, developmental, and community-oriented approaches into student formation and civic engagement. Her work focuses on children and youth development, mental health, resilience, women, indigenous communities, and culturally grounded psychological frameworks. Through her scholarship and leadership, she advances interdisciplinary dialogue and promotes contextually responsive approaches to psychological science, community well-being, and sustainable development. I am happy just to pass the floor over to you, Eden. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Janet, for the introduction. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's evening here in the Philippines. Um, it's an honor to be here today to share a study that sits at the intersection of developmental science, climate action, indigenous knowledge, and youth participation. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, so this is the title of my presentation. Positive Youth Development Among Indigenous Youth, Strengthening Environmental Conservation and Community-Based Ecotourism in the Sierra Madre Alta Ancestral Domain through the Youth-Driven Indigenous Conservation and Ecotourism Stewardship Model. So this particular study was funded by the Forest Foundation Philippines, Association for Asian Studies, and Sweden is for Rich. So today, I would like to bring our attention to a group of people who are frequently overlooked in climate conversations, the indigenous youth. Specifically, I will share the voices and perspectives of the Alta indigenous youth from Sierra Madre Mountain Range in the Philippines and argue that they should not are merely viewed as victims of environmental change or beneficiaries of programs, but rather recognized as leaders and stewards in sustainable futures. So this is the Sierra Madre. And why is this place important? To understand the study, we first need to understand the significance of the Sierra Madre. The Sierra Madre is the longest mountain range in the Philippines. It stretches over 540 kilometers and contains some of the country's richest biodiversity. It serves as a natural barrier against typhoons. It regulates rainfall and sustains numerous river systems and ecosystems in the Philippines. But for the Alta people, the Sierra Madre is much more than geographic location. It is their home, it is their source of food and livelihood. It is where their traditions, stories, and cultural practices are rooted. Unfortunately, this ecological and cultural landscape is increasingly under threat. Indigenous communities throughout the world continue to face multiple pressures. First, there is environmental degradation brought about by deforestation, illegal logging, mining, and pollution. Second, there is cultural erosion, wherein traditional ecological knowledge and indigenous languages are gradually disappearing. Third, many developmental initiatives, including tourism programs, are externally designed and implemented with little participation from Indigenous communities themselves. And amid all these challenges, Indigenous youth are often absent from policy discussions. Their voices are rarely heard, their knowledge rarely recognized. These young people are the ones who will inherit these lands and continue the responsibility of environmental stewardship. So these are the indigenous youth of the Sierra Madre mountain range, the participants of my study. So this led me to ask the question, how do indigenous youth themselves understand environmental conservation and sustainable development? And why developmental science? As developmental scientists, we know that young people flourish when they are given opportunities for participation, meaningful contribution, and leadership. Positive youth development teaches us that youth are not problems to be solved, but resources to be developed. Young people thrive when they are given opportunities to build competence, confidence, connection, character, caring, and contribution. This perspective is especially relevant for Indigenous youth. This study adopts that perspective, the positive youth development. These are my research questions. So this study has three objectives. First, to examine how Alta youth understand environmental conservation and ecotourism. Second, to understand the role of ecotourism in supporting both economic development and environmental stewardship. And third, to identify the challenges and opportunities that Indigenous youth encounter in promoting sustainable practices within their communities. These questions are particularly important because there remains limited literature that documents Indigenous youth's own perspectives and voices on conservation and sustainability. This study involved 34 Alta Indigenous youth between the ages of 10 and 25 years old. Data collection was conducted in their ancestral domain in San Luis, Aurora Province, Philippines. I used the indigenous methodology, pakikipagkwentuhan, or story sharing, together with focus group discussion in gathering data. I used indigenous methodologies because they privilege relationships, trust, dialogue, and shared meaning-making. The data were analyzed using interpretative phenomenological analysis, which seeks to understand how individuals make sense of their lived experiences. So these are the Alta youth of San Luis, Aurora, Philippines. We conducted a study in their tribal halls and at the river banks in the huts they rent out to visitors. So these are the findings of the study. First, nature is life theme, connection to nature. The first finding was shows the profound connection that the Alta youth have with nature. One participant said, nature is our source of food, water, everything. Another participant describe nature as encompassing trees, rivers, animals, and people, all interconnected. For the Alta youth, nature is not simply a resource, it is livelihood, protection, identity, home. Ecological identity is central to Indigenous youth development. To them, environmental destruction is not merely ecological loss, it is also a cultural loss, psychological loss, and developmental loss. Next, youth understands environmental threats. The second finding was that the Alta youth possess a sophisticated understanding of environmental threats. They talked about illegal logging, illegal mining, pollution, and improper waste disposal. They also connected environmental destruction to disasters such as flooding and landslides. They did not speak about these issues in abstract terms. They spoke from lived experiences. They remembered floods that destroyed homes and displaced families. Their narratives reveal environmental awareness, risk perception, and ecological knowledge that are often underestimated in young people. The Indigenous youth are not passive observers. They are highly aware of the environmental changes occurring around them. Ecotourism as hope. The third finding was that the youth viewed ecotourism as an opportunity. They saw ecotourism as a way of generating income while preserving their environment. They talked about renting out cottages, guiding tourists, and showcasing the beauty of their ancestral lands. They did not see economic development and environmental conservation as competing goals. They are seen as mutually reinforcing. If the environment is protected, tourism can flourish. And if tourism is community-based and sustainable, it can provide alternatives to extractive activities such as illegal logging and mining. This reflects a deep understanding of sustainability among the Indigenous youth. However, there are tensions in ecotourism. The youth also recognize the challenges. They spoke about responsible tourists. They mentioned about littering and destruction of plants. They discussed theft and social conflicts. They expressed frustration about weak policy support and inadequate government actions. The youth want development, but development which respects their community, culture, and environment. They do not reject tourism, only the exploitative form of tourism. The findings suggest that the Indigenous youth are far more than beneficiaries of conservation programs. They are environmental stewards, knowledge holders, community leaders, and climate actors. They possess ecological knowledge and have strong sense of place and responsibility. They demonstrate agency, resilience, and they actively participate in protecting their ancestral lands. Based on the findings, I developed the Youth-Driven Indigenous Conservation and Ecotourism Stewardship Model, or YICESM. The model proposes that Indigenous youth contribute to sustainability through three interconnected domains. First, environmental stewardship. Second, cultural knowledge transmission. And third, sustainable livelihood formation. These dimensions are interconnected and are mutually reinforcing. The model places the Indigenous youth at the center of conservation and ecotourism rather than at the margins. It also integrates positive youth development principles with Indigenous ecological knowledge. So this is the model with three arms. In the middle is sustainable community-based ecotourism. So the model highlights economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social sustainability. So why this matters for developmental scientists? I believe this study offers several important contributions to developmental science. First, it highlights ecological identity as an important dimension of youth development. Second, it demonstrates the importance of youth agency in addressing environmental challenges. Third, it shows that cultural identity, and environmental stewardship are deeply intertwined. And lastly, it reminds us that sustainable development cannot be achieved without meaningful youth participation. Youth climate action is not merely about changing systems, it's also about nurturing young people who can lead those changes. So what are the implications for policy and practice? Based on the findings, I recommend several actions. First, Indigenous youth should be included in the environmental decision-making process. Second, government and organizations should support youth-led ecotourism initiatives. And third, we need culturally relevant environmental education and leadership programs. Fourth, there should be greater legal protection for ancestral lands and stronger enforcement against illegal resource extraction. And lastly, partnerships among governments, non-government organizations, and indigenous communities should promote intergenerational learning and youth leadership. I also see opportunities for developing micro-credential programs that train indigenous youth in conservation, leaderships, and sustainable entrepreneurships. And I want to end my presentation with this words. If we want sustainable futures, we cannot simply conserve forests and rivers. We must also nurture the young indigenous stewards who will inherit and protect them. So these are the indigenous youth of DevSCA San Luis, Aurora, Philippines. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Eden. And I think we have some time for questions before we move to the second presentation. So I'm curious if anyone immediately has something they would like to ask Eden.
May I ask a quick question? Yeah, thank you very much, Eden, for such an excellent presentation about the position of indigenous youth in environmental conservation sustainably. Because as you say rightly, they are the ones who are going to inherit what is there. So if they are not involved in taking care of it, then of course the people who are there might not have that kind of connection. I mean, the older people don't have the kind of connections they have because they represent the future. Now, my question is a very quick one. You talk a lot about ecotourism and how the
Yes.
youth want this to be sustainable. And of course, you've mentioned a few things like, for example, when the tourists are careless, they litter and so on. I'm just wondering, do these young people have other ways of earning a living? You know, which other ways are there? Is there agriculture? Is there like trading? Is there, yeah. And indigenous youth, do they go to school? Because sometimes in many communities, I know when we talk about indigenous young people, like some places I work, some of them don't even go to school. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for the question. Yes, the indigenous youth participants are, they go to school in the elementary and high school, and there was one who graduated already from college. And most of them are involved in selling. They sell their produce of their lands, like fruit-bearing plants, also the trees and there was also a group of indigenous youth who are into basket weaving. So these are their activities. But they are already engaged in ecotourism because they live beside a river and there are huts that are for rent for visitors, for tourists. And so they would collect like 500 pesos. That's a minimum wage for in the Philippines for a hut. Okay, so for a day's rent. And yes, the indigenous youth are involved in ecotourism, but they believe that further development of this industry would discourage a lot of people in their community from engaging in extractive industries like cutting down of trees, because they have ecotourism. The proceeds they'll get from ecotourism will be an alternative source of livelihood. So they believe that ecotourism actually preserves the environment.
I also have a question. I don't know if someone else was ready and waiting, but I'm really curious to hear more about the knowledge transfer and how the youth you've worked with have experienced change in the transfer of knowledge or the current practices that facilitate knowledge transfer and ways of protecting that transfer of knowledge, because I do think that's something
Mm,
really is so specific and seems quite
yeah.
beautiful about Indigenous communities, that there is this connection to be passed on, and there's a knowledge and familiarity, and at least I feel like I never really learned so much about, so in my life that's not something that's been very present, and I'm really curious how this knowledge transfer takes place in the communities you've worked with, and if there's anything that can be done really to support the continuation of that relationship and passing on of knowledge.
Thank you, Janet, for the question. So, in the indigenous community, this indigenous youth attend mainstream school. It's a public school system in the Philippines, but there is a different kind of system, the indigenous school, which offer a different kind of knowledge about the culture, about transmission of knowledge about nature, about trees and flora and fauna. But this is very limited. The indigenous school in the Philippines, it's not usually offered. So with this indigenous youth, as I mentioned, they go to regular schools. So they don't have much practice on intergenerational transmission of knowledge, like knowing being taught by their fathers, their grandparents about the different trees, the different animals. So I give you an example of this intergenerational transfer of knowledge. Like, for example, how do they sustain food security within the community in order for them to have um, uh, uh, in order for them to have protein in their diet, they need to have the fowls, right? So what do they do if they don't have this animals? So they said that their ancestors would plant these trees and other plants that would attract the birds and other fowls, and then they'll make use of those fowls for their diet, for the source of protein. So can you imagine this knowledge, or this transfer of knowledge? What do you do in order for you to survive this kind of like harsh environment, the forest, for example? So this knowledge is not taught in regular schools. Only their ancestors or their parents, grandparents can teach them this kinds of knowledge. Like which medicinal plant could heal diarrhea, or diabetes. So these are the knowledge that they have within the community.
Great. It's really amazing to imagine that there's, it's a normal school, but then also this more local school that you can go to as well to get.
Yes, I think that's the limitation is that we don't have a lot of indigenous schools. And without these indigenous schools, then, well, it's easy to, forget about this wisdom, indigenous wisdom and information that these indigenous people have about the environment.
Are there any other questions? Well, then I want to thank you again for this presentation. I think it's such important work, and very grateful that you can share it with us, and hopefully that we can share it then with a wider community as well. Um, and with that, I will transfer to our second presentation for today from Aria Wetzel and Emily Bennett. Aria is an environmental studies major with double minors in food systems and political science at the University of Vermont. And Emily is a nutrition and food science major with a minor in integrative health at the University of Vermont. And together they are co-directors of the Climate Action Collective, which is a grassroots group of students who work to strengthen community connections and create innovative local solutions to the climate crisis. The CAC is primarily composed of students from the University of Vermont, Champlain College, and St. Michael's College. And I'm very eager to hear from you both about what the CAC is up to and what you've learned in that role together.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you good to share? Okay, awesome. I also just wanted to start by saying thank you so much, Dr. Terrell. That was incredibly engaging and inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's hard to second that. No. But okay, awesome. So just to reiterate, thank you so much for having us today. This is such an incredible opportunity. We both love the chance to talk about the CAC because it has such an incredibly important part in both of our lives. And so, yeah, this is awesome. So, thank you so much for inviting us on to talk. So, as was just mentioned, the CAC, or can you skip to the?
Yep.
Sorry. There.
Can you
Wait.
see, Aria?
It's not in like slideshow mode.
Sorry, everybody. It should be. How about now?
It's not in slideshow mode, but you can just like click through the slides if that's easier. Does that make sense?
Like you're seeing.
Yeah, I can see the slides.
Okay.
It's just not like full screen, but it's okay.
Okay.
It's not in presenter mode. We see the screen, or like you've shared your screen, but it doesn't seem like it's in presentation mode as much as like editing mode.
Okay.
It also doesn't matter at all. So this totally works. We can
If it
Yeah.
works, then let's run
Yes,
it.
great.
Yes.
So yeah, as was just mentioned, the CAC is a student-led collective right in Burlington, Vermont. We bring together students from UVM, Champlain College, and St. Michael's College, and we really work to address like hyper local climate solutions. And our goal is really to foster that collaboration between students and community members and activists, and just really work on that community building and meaningful change within Burlington. So yeah.
So a little bit about us. My name is Emily. I'm an incoming senior at the University of Vermont. I'm majoring in nutrition and food science with a minor in integrative health coaching. I transferred to UVM, so this is my second college, and I was really looking for a community to join with like-minded individuals, and CAC was where I really found a lot of success in that.
Yeah, and then I'm Aria. I'm an incoming junior at UVM. I'm an environmental studies major, food systems and political science minor. I joined the CAC during my first semester, and it was the first club I joined, and it really was like one of the main reasons I didn't transfer from UVM because I felt so much community and in the group and just was so inspired by everyone. So yeah. Um, Now, going on to what sustains us really as co-directors, um, definitely spending that time together every week, meeting like seminar style. We're all discussing. It was just like the highlight. Like you leave that meeting being like, wow, like we just did something. It was. It's so incredible. And then like also when the small goals were achieved, it can be really hard when you're working with like climate in the climate field to feel like you are making that change. But when you're able to like check off those small boxes and just be like, okay, we're doing something. Like even if it's slow, we are making that change. And then, of course, seeing new faces at meetings, especially when it's like midway through the semester, and then we just see someone, and then we get to talk to them and hear all about their background and like what brought them to our group, and then like seeing them again at the next meeting. That is just such an amazing feeling. And then also every spring semester, we host a networking night to really celebrate the CAC's accomplishments, as well as bring together community members and professors and activists. And it's just like that. The photo on the right was taken at our networking night and of all of the co-directors. So yeah, it's just such a great feeling.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, so the way the CAC is set up, we meet once a week. This semester, this year, it was Wednesday nights. So our co-director meetings were from 6 to 7, and then our general meeting was from 7 to 8. So we're really fitting a lot of different goals into like pretty much 2 hours a week. So CAC has been around since 2023, and while we weren't in the club since 2023, our predecessors really led us and gave us some great knowledge about how to run this club the past year. But in 2023, we attended the March to End Fossil Fuels in New York City, created a voter registration brochure, met with City Councilor Hannah King, planned a Mobilize Against McNeil rally. And for context, and we'll talk about this further in the presentation, McNeil is a biomass powered plant in Burlington, Vermont. It was erected in the early 80s, and it's really the focal point of a lot of renewable energy polarization in the city right now because it's the question of, well, is biomass truly a renewable source that we can run with sustainably for the next 100 years? In 2024, we attended the Vermonters Together rally, the 350 Vermont training. We co-hosted a candidate climate forum where we brought in a bunch of different candidates for city council that year and put them on stage, asked them questions for the general public, and really brought like hyper local democracy back to Burlington, Vermont. Not that it ever left, but it was the first time I saw a candidate forum in front of my own eyes and not on TV, which was really special. We tabled for voter registration information. We followed the Building Emissions Reduction Ordinance, met with Elizabeth Palchak, who is the former University of Vermont Director of Sustainability, and attended a city council meeting. And then last year, we co-hosted the city council candidate debate, met with City Councilor Ali Schachner, and formed the Burlington Beyond McNeil Coalition. And these photos, so we rent out a room in the Burlington Quaker Meeting House. We're not affiliated with anybody religiously, but we do kind of barter for our rent. So we do a gardening event twice a year to help pay. And yep, and then the photo below is from networking night in 2025.
And then just honing in on like the last year, our fall semester, we attended No Kings protest in solidarity with other movements of justice. We met with local climate activists to discuss Burlington's net zero energy roadmap. We created a digestible McNeil one-pager and supported the Vermont State Wildlands Act. We also got the opportunity to participate in a climate club mixer with other UVM clubs that are involved in climate organizing, and that was really awesome. And then we went to downtown Burlington and distributed those one-pagers we made all across the city. It was great bonding, and it was just a great way to celebrate the hard work that we made with making those one-pagers. And then the spring semester, we co-sponsored the Fix Your Vote, Don't Fix Our Forests rallies. We met with Nikhil Goyal, who is running for Vermont State Senate, and had a great meeting with him to discuss kind of how he stays motivated in politics in times where it can be really hard to feel like you're making an impact, especially with federal politics. Yeah, so that was really cool. And then we hosted a McNeil canvas of the Old North End, and Emily will discuss that further in a little bit. And then we created a single-use plastic cup banner in collaboration with the UVM Eco Reps that was displayed on UVM's campus. So yeah, that was also really awesome.
So Burlington, Vermont, for context, probably should have included a map on this, is a city of about 45,000 residents in northern Vermont, about 2 hours south of the Canadian border. And specifically, there's many neighborhoods in Burlington, but we wanted to focus on the Old North End, which is the map you can see at the top right. And the Old North End is very special because it's historically a lower income community in Burlington, and it's right in the heart of where the McNeil power plant is. It's bordering the Winooski River, so on the top right of this map, and truly the communities facing the most health impacts are the Old North End neighborhoods and also the Winooski neighborhoods right above the river. So we really wanted to talk with folks who were right in the action and just wanted to truly understand how much they knew about what was going on. We really wanted to run with the idea that we're not going to change anybody's mind by spitting facts at them, and we're not going to change their mind while standing at their door, grilling them with questions. Truly, we wanted this to be a community outreach campaign, gather data on what Burlingtonians knew about the issue, and then go from there. So we had about 12 canvassers, which are pictured on the bottom right, with one goal to understand what Burlingtonians know about the McNeil power plant and how they feel about it. We're coming in with a bias already. We're all, if not all of us, somewhat related to some environmental studies at the University of Vermont, and we know the data on McNeil and how it impacts agriculture, human health, and really all of the above that's alive because of the particulate matter. But we didn't want to push that on other people because, again, that's not how progress is made. So we came into this knowing we would not change people's minds by facts alone. So we asked 3 questions. Have you heard of McNeil? Have you been impacted by McNeil? And do you know how biomass is used as an energy source? And the data is pretty interesting. So we had, I think we knocked on over 50 doors, but we had 36 people want to give a response to this poll. So as you can see on the top left chart, bar graph, the question, have you heard of McNeil? The majority has not even heard of McNeil. And this is interesting because you will walk in this neighborhood in the winter when energy use is surging and especially demand, and you can see this massive plume coming from, just a mile north. And obviously people have seen it, but it hasn't been a connection like, oh, I wonder what that is. So a little more than half have said no, they haven't heard of McNeil. The second question, have you been impacted? And this is truly where I think the root of the issue is nobody's really sure if they've been impacted. And we have all this great data at the university a few miles east, but it hasn't disseminated into the community. And then really what's the point of higher education if it's not going to protect the community, which it's literally serving? Um, so then we have the third graph. Do you know how biomass is used as an energy source? And most people said no. And biomass is complicated because it's such an umbrella category. McNeil and the owners of McNeil, it's partially owned by the city, but it's partially privately owned. It's biomass, so they're using wood chips, but the question is where are the trees coming from? And sure, trees regenerate, but if they're virgin forests from Vermont land, like we need those in the ground because we have a huge flooding issue in the summer, let alone how much life do those trees support in the first place. So it's sort of a patchwork what's fueling McNeil, but we know that directly the human health impacts are pretty severe, especially when it's running. And it's already at the end of its lifespan. So as the Climate Action Collective, we were really trying to figure out how can we make a meaningful impact in bringing people together, really emphasizing the collective in our name, because at least in the United States right now, we are so incredibly polarized on talking about anything, especially climate, and that really demands our attention right now. So some questions we got at the door. What are the next steps to this? Isn't biomass just trash? How much deforestation is caused by the plant? What's a better alternative to improve air quality? And is biomass worse than fossil fuels? And all these questions are fantastic. I think it really, and I think Arya would agree with me, they get to the root of there just is not enough information on what's happening right down the road at McNeil. There isn't enough transparency, um, and that we think will probably only be brought on by public pressure. So, absolutely, I mean, a just transition is necessary, but truly with this canvas, we just wanted to see where people's opinions lie.
And then moving on to what challenges have we faced as both co-directors and also just as a club in general. Inheriting a club can definitely be hard, especially when you're trying to figure out the dynamics of co-directors and kind of how to move on from the past dynamics of old co-directors. And just so there's three of us trying to decide like how we're going to work, who's running the meetings, who's doing the emails, like that can definitely be a little difficult. And then again, that tangible evidence of change that I discussed before. And then sustaining membership, especially in the winter, can be difficult because we are about a 10-minute walk from UVM and Champlain, and then like a 10-minute drive from St. Mike's. So yeah, especially in the winter, it can be kind of hard. We definitely see our membership dwindle a bit. So having people stay motivated, still like trying to assign tasks to people so they feel like, oh, I need to come back to this meeting because I'm supposed to be making this poster for this event or emailing this person. So yeah, that's definitely something we've been trying to that we found is really important is to assign tasks to people so that they're motivated to come to meetings even in the winter. And then as a collective, it can be hard because there's so many great ideas from all different members, and it can be hard to decide like, oh, what should we do? What is the right path? Because we wish we could do it all, but unfortunately, we're only there for the academic year, which goes by so fast. But yeah. And then also deciding when we have to shift if something, maybe isn't working out how we planned or it's just too slow or whatever's happening, deciding, oh, okay, let's shift, let's try something else. But deciding when that time is, that could definitely be a challenge.
And kind of like what sustains us, what are our motivations to do this work anyways? Our love for the environment, it sounds somewhat like a platitude, but it's really so true. UVM attracts a very outdoorsy group of students, and the Climate Action Collective really highlights those students. So, um, I mean, Burlington's also an incredibly walkable city. So when you're walking to the Burlington Friends Meeting House, you're seeing all the seasons. It's quintessential New England. And like Arya said, we meet during the academic year. So that's fall, spring, and winter. And winter in northern Vermont, at least this winter, was probably consistently 10 degrees and it's getting dark at 4 p.m. So the motivation is strong to go to these meetings, and we truly believe it's from the love of the environment. And we have about 15 members averaging each meeting. And really, like Arya was saying again, everyone comes with their own ideas, and that's super special. It's not a blessing and a curse, but it's very fun to compromise. And it's interesting because it's not something that I grew up with a lot, at least like I've only ever known a United States to be very polarized. So when we're having these meetings, sitting in a circle and we're disagreeing with each other, it's very, very cool to witness coming back to a final product and really the reasons why we're doing this work in the first place. Again, working together on projects larger than ourselves, I think is super important. Being in school full time, like we're all doing, is very important, but it's also hyper independent, and we're all submitting our own work, and we all have a buy into our own education. But doing something in a collective like this, it's very cool to have to lean on one another and, assign tasks, but have all those tasks really play into a final product. Seeing new members at meetings is always very special. And creating relationships with fellow students and community members is very invaluable. Seeing, the city councilor you talked to the day before in the grocery store the next day is something very new to me, and it's something that, we've really worked hard to build, and I'm excited to see what we do with in the future.
And also, what have we learned? We definitely, because we are sponsored by 350 Vermont, which is a larger climate organization. We've learned a lot about the importance of just transitions and how intersected climate work is with social movements, especially with our McNeil work. How can we have a just transition away from polluting sources of energy while also thinking about all the workers that are at the plant and how to get them into different jobs if we're dismantling the plant and just yeah, thinking about how intersected our work is with so many other things. We really have learned that young people do have power. Vermont is has a very old population, so when our youth are infiltrating these groups and are speaking our minds, our voices are definitely heard because we are in the minority of our state. So yeah, that's really awesome to see how we have power when we walk in a room, we speak our mind, we see all these older generations' ears perk up because they're like, oh, okay. So yeah, that's awesome. And then there really is just so much energy in coming together to create something and just seeing that final product. It's awesome. And then do you want to do goals? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So for the future, I'm no longer going to be co-director this coming year, but Aria will with our other co-director, Emily Weiss, and a new student, which is very exciting. But really, as a collective, we're thinking more youth events, more connections, maybe with local elementary schools or middle schools, increasing male membership. We are trying to always diversify and tends to be a very female leaning group, which is interesting. Probably not much behind that, but we're just always trying to get more people with different ideas to join. Um, Increasing more St. Michael's College and Champlain student engagement. It is predominantly a UVM group, I think, because of location and because of the co-directors being a part of the UVM community already. And really, I mean, using the data we got from our canvas could be so interesting to influence Burlington city politics. McNeil feels like the story of, I don't know, Cicero, like, pushing a rock up a mountain, trying to get it to the top, but it's just so difficult. So that's also, weighs heavy on morale as a group. It's not like, we're finishing each meeting with things accomplished to check off the box. We might need a shift and do something a little bit more tangible where we can see more results in the immediate just to keep engagement high.
Yeah, so thank you so much for listening. This has been so incredible to share a little bit about the CAC. If you have social media, follow us on Instagram, climate.action.collect. Or we'd love to talk over email. So our email is cac@350vermont.org. So yeah, thank you so much again. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for this presentation. It's inspiring, and I think we're frequently speaking about what does climate action look like. I think you are giving us a really fantastic role model of what climate action can look like in a local context, and seeing it come directly from young people. It is exactly what this group is all about seeing more of in the world. So it's inspiring, it's heartwarming, and I'm sure there will be other questions from the audience as well. Does anyone want to start us off with some questions for these final 10 minutes?
Gina, I don't have a question. I just have a comments to
Please.
make about your wonderful presentation. And as Gina said, this is really something we at DevSCA really need to hear, because this is what we talk about, some of the things we talk about in DevSCA, having young people take more responsibility, moving up to the table as you have been doing, and doing it, managing to overcome the challenges. Like, for example, when you talk about during winter, the membership dips because of the, darkness comes early, people don't want to be walking in the cold and things like that. And creatively going through that, yeah, this is excellent. I think you people are doing an excellent job, and I'll definitely check out your website to follow you. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
Thank you so much.
Well, I think I want to also thank you for your presentation. Um, I guess one question I have is if you ever have the opportunity to partner with student groups at other universities, and if not, if that's something that you're interested in doing in the future.
We've mainly stick to universities in Burlington. But yeah, we haven't really partnered outside of Vermont, but I think that that would be an incredible opportunity. I think just discussing like learning how other groups are doing it, getting bouncing ideas off, that seems awesome. So definitely something we'd be open to. I don't know, Emily, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's such a great idea. And Burlington has three colleges in its realm, and then there's obviously other schools in Vermont, but it's a lot less concentrated. And I think it gets to the heart of like, like what role do we have? Is it like a hyper local group? Is it a regional group? Is it a statewide group? And it gets tough knowing where our impact can lie. I think when we connect with larger organizations, not that it wouldn't be a huge strength, but it's tough to know where, to make the most impact, especially in a state that's pretty small, pretty rural, and covered by snow 9 months out of the year. So it's a great point. I don't know the answer to that, but we should definitely look into it, especially like Northern New York could be interesting because we face the same issues.
Please, Bronwyn.
Yeah, hi. Thank you both for a great, really engaging presentation. It was really great work. And one of the items you were talking about for the upcoming agenda is outreach to schools, I think, if I remembered that. Can you say a little bit more about what the thinking, is there any initial thinking? Are you thinking elementary, high school, middle, any initial thoughts you have about that outreach to the education system in Burlington? Thank you.
We talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the fall semester, how we did really want to engage with I think we were mainly talking like high school students because I know that a lot of high schoolers will go to 350 Vermont being like, I really want to get involved in climate work, but I don't know where to start. And I know that 350 Vermont kind of struggles with like, oh, should they go to the college organizing or like how does this work? But I think it'd be really cool to form those community bonds with high schoolers or try and form like how maybe we go to a school and we talk or we like do a craft and just like talk about climate work and just connect with these people and like tell them what we've been doing and how our transition to college has been and like our work in college and our future goals and then connect with these high schoolers because I think that would have been a really great opportunity for me if I had college students come to me in high school and tell me about their path. But even elementary school and middle school, that would be awesome if we could form some sort of community event. Yeah, we haven't really discussed what the logistics of it would look like, but we do really want to get involved with the younger generations as well.
Thank you.
I guess one quick question that I have is whether you both are surprised by um, your engagement in this community, if this is something you anticipated being so involved with when you went to college, or if this is something that has become maybe a bigger part of your life than you had anticipated. Um, yeah, because I just think that's also I'm just curious, is this something that you already felt like was going to be a big part of your college experience, or maybe it was a bit of a surprise, and if it was a surprise, how it ended up happening this way?
That's a really great question. So no, I didn't. So I went to a school in about 45 minutes west of Boston for my freshman year. And unfortunately, I grew up with Lyme disease, which is a disease that's transmitted via tick. It's very common in New England and it's getting a lot worse with climate change, ironically. So I had to take a gap year to really focus on treatment because I couldn't really function academically. And during my gap year, I got really into climate work, specifically like the Sunrise Movement and just really youth organizing around like what do we do about this? Because we can doom scroll until the world ends, but it's organizing and being with community is such an antidote to all of that anxiety. So I came into UVM knowing I wanted to find a group, but I didn't think other people um, cared as much as me. And that sounds kind of sad, but it's super easy to get stuck in that isolation. Um, Especially as the like politics were changing in the US, it was very difficult to watch that and not feel like you have any agency in that. So I came into UVM looking, like wishing for a community like this. But I think the most surprising part was directing the CAC and seeing people come back week after week in snow pants. I did not expect people to care enough. And again, that sounds kind of sad, but it was just so I don't even want to say heartwarming. It was really emotional to, sit in a little room every Wednesday night throughout the entire winter um, with shared goals, but also just like a need to connect on this because it just can be so incredibly isolating. Um, so yeah, it's become a huge part of my college experience, but it's really, I think, just a lifestyle at this point to want to connect with folks about this.
Yeah. And then for me, I definitely wanted to get involved in some sort of climate work. I spent all of my childhood outside, and I know that I wanted to get involved with what I could. And so in my intro to environmental studies class, I had a presentation about the CAC, and I showed up to the meeting. I was 10 minutes late, but there was pizza. So that was a plus. So I grabbed my pizza, I walked in, and I was just instantly greeted by so much warmth. Everyone coming up to me, "What's your name? Oh, what brought you here?" It was just I felt so warm and I was just smiling like my face hurt because I was smiling the whole time. And then I got home from the meeting and I instantly called my mom and I was like, "Wow, I think I finally found my purpose on campus. Like this is incredible." Um, and yeah, I just was going to the meetings ever since, and then it led to me being a co-director, and it's become such an incredible part of my life, and I'm just so grateful that I showed up to that first meeting, and yeah, it's just so awesome. I'm so happy about it.
Thank you both so much for joining this meeting and for sharing your personal experiences and also more about the incredible work that this group is doing. It's, I think, very satisfying as a community of researchers to hear direct, experiences that reflect these concepts that we study, right? This idea of positive youth development in the context of climate change. I feel like we're just hearing such, uplifting and reassuring stories that demonstrate that it can happen. And so as a community of researchers, I think that's also really motivating and sustaining for us. So it's really a pleasure to have heard your perspectives and your stories. And thank you again for being here. And I think, yeah, we might be ending just right on time. And I can keep you in the email list if you ever want to join our sessions. We have these presentations planned basically through up until I think February 2027. So we've got lots of sessions planned, and hopefully there'll be interesting presentations for you all to hear too.
Um, I'm going to share the link to my paper at
Thank
the
you
chat.
so much. And Eden, if you'd like, I can also send it out with the recording of the session. So thank
Thank
you for
you.
sharing that. Okay, any other final comments, remarks, or until next time? Bye all, nice to see
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much again.
Of course, thank you. Bye.